Hail Pandawans! It's been a while since I've done a video, so I thought I would share a video and then also have a little bit of VO over it. I'm using a crappy mic and headset, so apologies to any of the crappy audio that you may be suffering through right now. Anyways, so the other day I was in my garage and I found this clothes hanger that was, screwed to the wall. And I looked at it, and I show a picture of this in the thumbnail. So check it out if you don't remember seeing what it was. I saw this clothes hook, and I looked at it, and to me it looked like, I don't know, I guess like an elephant skull or something like that. It had two eyes, a big old kind of prominent forehead, and it had these two what looked like tusks to me. And then I was thinking, I'm like, well, I guess it could also look like it has two trunks or something like that. And that got me thinking, little inspiration set in. Started as a spark, and now I'm starting to fan the inspiration, try to get it to be something. I saw it and I was like, okay, well, why would an elephant have multiple trunks if those were trunks? I go, well, what if it was something like a elephant, some kind of primordial demon beastie, whatever, multiple trunks, multiple tusks, and that just set me on a quest. I wanted to do a little picture of that. So as I was drawing this thing, and as you can kind of see, the elephant head is rather big, and then hanging down from now his multiple snouts are hanging there, and to me they kind of also look like tentacles. I'm like, well, big bulbous head and tentacles, what it's like, kind of Cthulhu like. What if it's a Cthulhu-phant? Bad puns make great pictures. All right, so yeah, I just started doing a rough sketch of it, and then once you get the sketch down, I sort of, I'm in Photoshop, obviously. I'll copy that and I'll fade it down and start doing a little bit tighter lines. And to me, these aren't necessarily tight lines, but they're better guides than the faded rough ones that I had before. So that's how it started. Now, this picture is probably not going to be the greatest thing ever, but what was cool about it is just that little moment of recognizing something out of something else than what it was. And that's always fun as an artist, to be able to do things like that. Is you look at something, you know, everyone's done this since the dawn of time. They look in the clouds and they see, some kind of face or some kind of shape that's, oh, there's something, there's a creature in the clouds and all that sort of stuff. And that's always been funny. I remember as a kid doing that all the time, and then slowly watching the clouds dissipate, and that one shape that you saw sometimes would morph into something else. Sometimes it would, dissipate, and then it would be nothing. But it's always fun to be able to see things in objects that aren't really there. That's part of being an artist, I guess. um, so yeah, so I'm gonna keep talking whenever something I start working on something on the picture. I'll chime in, but otherwise, yeah. I hope you guys enjoy this video, and I'll chime in a little bit, I guess. Screw it. I'll just I can keep yapping forever. And if you guys get bored of the blabber, just turn off the volume, put on some tunes or something like that. Yeah, so here I'm just going over all the stuff, and as I'm going over the artwork, I'm adding to things that were not in the original, sketches. Like I just kind of threw some rough horns on that critter there, going over and adding little spikes and little hooks and little, claw type things to the end of the tentacles. And a lot of that, like that's some of the most fun part, is watching the picture build up over time. You start adding things and you start seeing things in your sketch lines that you didn't even intend. So yeah, the next step that I did here is I made another layer and just colored it gray, like a multiply layer. And now I'm just going in and roughing in some shadows, roughing in some things that I want to have maybe be pushed back in the background a little bit, and then I go through and I erase or add, some brighter tones to it. So yeah, I love doing that with the eyes. Automatically, it makes it just look, fierce. Um, but yeah, so now once the initial sketch is done, now you're just going in and building up tones, building up areas of highlights. And there are artists out there, and I've done this myself, working with all the highlights on one layer, working with all the shadows on another layer. But this is not trying to be some kind of fancy thing where I want to be able to adjust stuff on the fly, or make things easier for myself. This is just kind of a fun doodle, one of my brutal doodles, as I like to say. And the pose on it, again, nothing great. It's a pretty, I don't know, stiff, standard, boring. Um, I like drawing things from the just the front view. I don't know why. There's just something a bit more. I don't know if it's not artistic, but iconic. It almost looks like this could be on a the center of an album cover, or on a T-shirt or something like that. Um, I could, I did a few sketches in the very beginning. It was probably because this is all sped up. You probably didn't get a chance to see it. But I did a couple sketches where one was three-quarter of view, stuff like that. And I don't know, I didn't like it as much. I'd rather just do something that's straight on, and you could just get the full sort of impact of it. There's, nothing is quite as scary as something just staring at you straight on, dead in the face. Um, yeah, and I guess it's probably easier to draw that way, but some of the greatest artists, guys like, Brahm. If you aren't familiar with Brahm, check out his stuff. He's super awesome. I was fortunate enough to get to work with him on, many projects with my day job. And but I was a fan of his from, geez, back in the, what was it? Was it late 80s maybe, when he was working on Dark Sun? That was a D&D game that was sort of set in a apocalyptic fantasy world almost. It's not exactly that, but it was very different from your standard fantasy fare. Burning wastelands, toxic, jungles, and the characters all looked like they were just out in this sunburnt landscape surviving. No frilly elves and beardy dwarves really. I mean, they were in there, but they were more not as recognizable as you would normally see them. They all had sort of that fantasy Mad Max sort of vibe going on. But he, getting back to the original point why I brought it up, um, he tends to do a lot of things, or at least he used to, either straight on, or from like a side view profile. And I always liked that about his illustrations. One of my favorite fantasy artists from the D&D days, Larry Elmore. He would do these beautiful pictures, but Brahms was really different because they were just sort of, things were very centered. Things were very simple in their not design, I'm sorry, but like their poses. They weren't trying to do some crazy Spider-Man action pose or some cinematic take where, it's a worm's eye looking up on stuff. Like, all that stuff's great, but that all just ends up looking like movie stills to me. And, I guess that helps, like when you're, creating stuff to impart that feel, cinematic feel. I always prefer just the straight up sort of illustrations. Guys like, Frazetta, he would do some very cool poses, but he never did any, elaborate or crazy camera angles. And more nowadays, people do that on everything, and it is gorgeous. But there's just something about something that still feels like an illustration or a painting, and not clipped from a still of some, Marvel movie, beautifully rendered and all that. But, I don't know. Again, I see the pros and cons of all sort of things. And, sometimes when you're, trying to convey, like, this is what this world looks like, or this is what, the movie will look like, getting that cinematic quality on there is important. So back to the picture here. Um, I'm going in now. I basically copied what I did, adjusted it to be a little darker, and then you just erase some of the areas so that lighter image can shine through. Again, it's another way of just adding highlights adding shadows. It gets a little more texture because when you erase, it's not a, complete, you're not completely erasing the image. It's leaving some leftover effects, and that adds texture and all that. And you can do all sorts of things, of course, in Photoshop with brushes that are just pure texture. And, I've used that myself. But at the end of it all, I really just like kind of drawing it. This video was originally, I sat down and did this image in about an hour and a half. So I cranked it down to about 20 minutes for this video, which still, I'm just talking over it right now, seems very long. I'm watching it like, if I'm bored, everyone else probably is. But you can, what do you guys think? Do you think I should put up like the full video of it? Like, so from here I go on and I end up coloring the image and adjusting, tweaking some different colors and trying different takes on it. And I can post that as well. It's an hour and a half, like I said. I don't know if that would be even more boring than this one. But you know what? This is seeing these kind of like, speed paints or whatever it is, time-lapse stuff. You can see like the artist just looks like, when I've watched these, it looks like the artist is just going like, just jamming, like everything's thought out. And, the original ones, they're, slower, of course, but yeah, this actually looks like I know what I'm actually doing. In reality, I'm thinking like, all right, well, what am I going to do after this? Am I just going to do black and white? Should I do a color? What if I screw up and now it's all recorded and everyone's, you know, seeing all the screw ups? But the great thing about images like this isn't for anything. This was just for fun. I obviously put a lot more thought into some of my, work pictures and some of my personal work pictures, of course. But for something like this, it's almost just fun to just start seeing where things are going to go. And, you can always, if there's a screw up, you can always just go with it or things like that. Or, if you want to bother erasing, I of course erased in here a few times, but most of the time it's just fun noodling on something and just building up all those different, strokes of the pixelated pen, and just having fun with it. You don't, not everything has to be an image that is going to last forever or stand the test of time. Sometimes it's just fun to, sit down for an hour or so and without a thought in your head, as is most of the way I do things, just go and start drawing and see where your imagination and creativity take you. And here, I guess it was for a Cthulhu-phant, which is another word, another name I was going to call it was the HP elephant. But most people don't know that, Cthulhu was created by, a dude named HP Lovecraft. So HPL, or, obviously his initials. HP elephant has a good ring to it too, but I thought Cthulhu-phant would probably be more relevant. People know Cthulhu and things like that. And again, I have no idea if the VO in this thing sounds good. So if it sucks, I'll delete it. Or more than likely, since I already did it, I'll just leave it in and figure out how to do it better the next time. That's one thing. Okay. So what I'm talking about right now in terms of what I'm doing artistically, anyone who's an artist, knows this already. So specifically for you guys out there who, aren't artists or comfortable with your art, it doesn't matter. Like, the best thing you can do is just start drawing on something. And if it starts coming out crappy, yeah, you could get rid of it or stuff, or you could just finish it and see what happens. Sometimes taking something that's kind of crappy looking and working on it, and you get it out of the crap zone and into an area where you're like, all right, it's not bad. It's manageable. It's survivable. It did the job, and now for the next image that I do, will be even better. But yeah, like don't stress too much. Obviously, again, this is for personal art, fun. If it's, for a job and stuff like that, obviously take more time, and, it's more important because you're making art for someone else. But when you're making art for yourself, you could always keep those standards as well. But sometimes it's just fun to say, all right, well, I can't, this turd, you can't polish it, but you can cover it in cool smoky effects and add extra trunks and tusk to it. There you go. So I'm going to try to keep doing stuff like this hopefully once a week, do a little speed paint video like this because I'm drawing anyways. And now I just got to get over the hump of drawing while it's being recorded and things like that, because a lot of times I'm not sitting at my desk the whole time. I'll have to get up and you know do something with the kid, or go you know lift something heavy and put it away, or I don't know, stuff like that. But I'm learning the UI and of the, what am I working in, OBS Studio. And there's kids out there now making these awesome pictures and being able to do all these awesome videos. And I'm like, well, if a kid can do it, hopefully I can do it. I was a kid once. So yeah, so now this is always some of my favorite parts when working on a picture. The bulk of the image is down, and now it's just going in and adding like little highlights, little details, things like that. The more you put into something, the more detailed it can be. You can also run into the problem of, if you overwork something, it starts losing whatever sort of power the original sketch had. But a lot of times detail is cool. It doesn't make the image. You don't want to have something that's a dumb image but that's super detailed. But if you're having fun doing it, why not? Yeah, so here now, this is the fun part, just adding like little bits of whatever is dripping from his multiple trunks. It's kind of gross. But yeah, at about this time, I'm like, all right, well, now I'm starting to over noodle this thing. I'm going to be polishing this turd forever. Maybe we add some color to this turd. So I'm thinking in my head now, like, okay, well, do I want to stop? Do I want to just call it a day? And I go, no, I need to start. I want to. If I'm gonna start doing these videos, I'm gonna be working in color. Might as well try it now. So the coloring actually, geez, I don't know, didn't take up that much of the time. It's mostly getting the tones and shades and shadows and lights down. And the more work you put into this stage, the black and white, for this type of coloring I'm doing, the better it works, because all you have to do is just use flat colors, and you can start getting just like a beautiful array of different shades with the image, all by using some flat colors basically. And that's achieved because you've already put in all that work with the black and white image below. It's like colorizing those old TV programs. It's black and white, and they can just add colors over it, and it's largely hits the mark. Now, you can't just stop at this. I think you put on a color layer, which for people who don't use Photoshop, basically lets you color whatever's you color on the layer, and then everything below it takes on that color. You can't get the greatest colors, so if you're not familiar, try a different variety of a color layer with a multiply layer, either over it or under it, or an overlay layer. And what's great is, I love using Photoshop. I've used it, geez, for the last, I don't know, almost 30 years. But I still get just as much satisfaction and potentially even more joy still working on my sketch pad. Now, the sketch pad doesn't allow me to be as flexible as Photoshop does. But once you commit to the sketch pad, and you kind of have to go back to that, okay, well, it's down now and it's in ink, and you got to kind of polish it and make it work. And there's so many sketches I've done over the years that I look at and go, oh, I should have scanned it in Photoshop. I could have tweaked this and tweaked that. But at the end of it all, like, who really cares? Again, a lot of the things in my sketchbook are nothing that needs to last forever or stand the test of time. It to me, it shows me here is a good group of hours I spent on something, having an awesome time. And what's great about that is, in the sketchbook, if you just stick with it, pretty soon your whole sketchbook is filled with these awesome images. And looking at all the pages and seeing all the time and the hours that you spent, um, yeah, it makes me happy. It's just really fun to see that. It's good to know that at the end of the day, if the world goes to crap and there's no more electricity and no more this, and I can still draw on a cave wall with the charred bones of my enemies if I want to. Um, Hell, and if worse comes to worse, I could always cut my finger and use the paint of the vein. And of course it's red. So as you can see, I started with the orange and all that, and it just wasn't feeling Cthulhu-y enough. So I went with more some somber tones and things like that. Um, and now I'm just kind of noodling around and trying different things and seeing where the color will look best. Not really thought out, but that's how it is when you're just doing it on the fly. So I ain't got much more. So I hope you all enjoyed this. Remember your ABCs, Pandawans. Always be creating. Cheers and beers. Talk to you later.